Things around here are getting a bit cramped. We need to collect what we need and begin building our new city. But that takes time, and winter is approaching. Join this adventure through the seasons to improve and entice the many critters in the surrounding area to live and thrive in your city under the great tree in Everdell. Everdell is a 1 to 4 player game for ages 13 and up with an average gameplay length of 45 to 90 minutes, published by Starling Games. The basic overview of Everdell has you sending out workers to gather resources in order to pay the cost of cards to be played in front of you to create your own woodland city, and the player with the most points wins. To set up the game, place the board in the middle of the table, with the Evertree towards the back of the board. Along the riverbank, you will see places to place some of the resources. Here, we will place the twigs. Continuing to the right, we will put the resin, followed by the pebbles, and we will end with the berries. These containers do not come with the game, but help me keep things better organized. If you would like some for yourself, I will leave a link in the description below. Near the board, place the point coins as well as the occupied/door tokens. Also, along the riverbank, you will place the 4 basic event tiles. From left to right, you will place the City Monument, the Grand Tour Boat, the Harvest Festival Tent, and the Cartographer's Expedition Caravan. You will then place 4 special events face up from the shuffled event deck onto the lower branches of the Evertree. Place any unused cards back in the box, and then shuffle the forest cards. In a 2-player game, you will draw 3 cards and place 1 on each of the forest clearings face up, leaving 1 empty. And in a 3 to 4 player game, you will draw 4 cards and place 1 in each clearing. Again, put any unused cards back in the box. Now shuffle the main deck and randomly place 8 cards face up in the meadow. Then place the deck inside the base of the Evertree. Each player picks their critters and keeps 2 in front of them while placing the others atop the Evertree for later rounds. They will place 1 each in the spring side, another 1 on the summer side, and finally 2 in the autumn side. Next, decide on the first player. The rules recommend the most humble player goes first, so if any player declares themselves to be the most humble, they will obviously not be going first. Going clockwise, starting with the first player, we'll draw 5 cards from the main deck. The second player will draw 6 cards, the third player 7, and finally the fourth player will draw 8 cards to create each player's starting hand. And with that, you are ready to begin the game. On each player's turn, you will be able to take a single action. Your options are place a worker, play a card, or prepare for the next season. When placing a worker, there are 2 types of locations to be aware of. There are the exclusive locations where only 1 worker can occupy the space, identified by a closed circle, and a shared location where multiple workers, even of the same type, can occupy, identified by an open circle. If playing with less than 4 players, the forest locations marked with this symbol are not available to occupy. When placing a worker, you have several options. You have the basic locations along the river bank. You can collect resources and/or cards. You have the forest locations that are randomized each playthrough. These are usually more powerful than basic locations, but have limited availability. Some cards that may be played throughout the game in either your city or another player's city, called destination cards, can also provide a location where you can place a worker. However, if you use a destination card in another player's city, they can collect 1 point token from the supply. The event locations can only be occupied upon completing all requirements listed. On the basic events, you must have the required number of card types in your city, and for special event cards, you must have the cards listed at the top of the event card in your city before placing a worker on the event card to collect. Speaking of cards, if you ever want to discard your cards, you can go to the Haven location. If you discard 2 cards, you can collect one of any type of resource, and you can do this for every set of 2 cards you discard. And finally, we have the journey locations. These are only available when you are in autumn, and in order to go there, you must discard the number of cards equal to the point coin value you choose to place your worker. Once a worker is placed on a location, it remains there until you move to the next season. But don't worry, even if all your workers are deployed, you can still play cards from your hand or from the meadow, provided you have the necessary requirements. With that being said, let's move on to playing a card. But first, let's go over the 2 types of cards you will encounter. The first type is a construction card. On the left of the card are the resource requirements to play that card. The icon below indicates the card type. The different card types indicate when the card will activate. For example, the Tan Traveler activates as soon as you play this card and never again. Whereas the green production icon activates once when played and then activates again when preparing for the season action in spring and in autumn. The red destination activates when a worker is placed on it. The blue governance when you play a certain type of card, and the purple prosperity are worth points at the end of the game. Continuing to the right of the icon, we have the number of cards in the deck, the name of the card, and the end game point value. Below the name of the card, you will see either unique or common. If common, you can have any number of this card in your city, but if unique, only 1 is allowed. Below that, we have the card text, which tells you what benefit this card offers your city. And finally, in the bottom right of the card, you have the critter icon and title. If you have the critter in your hand or in the meadow, instead of paying its cost to play, you can instead place an occupied token on your construction card to play that critter for free. The occupied token does not leave the card, even if the critter leaves the city. And each occupied spot can only be used once. Now, moving on to the critter cards. They are nearly identical, except in the top left, you not only have the resource cost, you also have the building it can occupy instead of paying that cost. Also, at the very bottom of the card, there is a bit of flavor text and no critter icon. And with the critter cards, the same rules apply whether it's a common card or a unique card. Therefore, commons you could have multiple in your city, and uniques only 1. After you have met the requirements to play the card, you place it in front of you to form or add it to your city. Your city has a limit of 15 cards and it is recommended to place them in 3 rows of 5 cards to help you and other players keep track of your city size. Your hand size also has a strict limit of 8 cards. You can never have more than 8 cards in your hand. If you go to a location that allows you to draw a card, and you already have 8 cards, you cannot take the draw card action. Another thing to keep in mind, if you play a card from the meadow, immediately replenish the meadow space before placing that card in your city. An example of timing when playing a card goes like this. Use card playing ability, such as the judge's ability to replace any one resource with another. Then pay the resource cost or use an occupy token. Replace the card if it comes from the meadow, skip if it did not. Place card in city. If the card removes another card from your city due to an effect, remove the card from your city first. Resolve any card effects from the card you just played. And finally, resolve any triggered effects from other cards in your city. For example, the courthouse that allows you to gain one of these 3 resources after playing a construction card. Finally, the third option in the list of actions that can be taken is to prepare for season. If you have played all your workers and either cannot play any cards or do not wish to play any more cards, you must prepare for the next season. To do this, you will recall all your workers, including any additional workers from the top of the Evertree for the season you are preparing for. Not only do you gain those workers, you can also activate the season bonus. In spring, you will gain a single new worker and activate all green production cards in your city in any order. In summer, you will gain a single new worker and may draw up to 2 meadow cards. And in autumn, you will gain 2 new workers and all green production cards will activate in your city in any order. Once you have reached the end of autumn and can no longer perform any action or do not wish to, you may pass, ending your game. All other players will continue playing until they have all passed before the game ends for everyone. Keep in mind, players will not always be in the same season and will end the game at different times. Once all players have passed and the game has ended, add up all points to find a winner. You must add the base value of all cards in your city, plus any point tokens, purple prosperity card bonuses, journey points, and event points. The player with the most points wins. If tied, the player with the most events wins. And if still tied, most leftover resources. Here is an example of a finished city and the points breakdown. And with all that, you now know how to play Everdell. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified about new videos. If you're bored now, click this for more games.